When it comes to the law of attraction and reality creation, the idea is you repattern your consciousness. You give yourself permission to be a new you. The CIA gateway process is these CIA documents. Basically what these documents show is the power of doing mind and heart coherence meditations and how that can expand your consciousness, even affect reality in a very powerful way. Ultimately, everything you can possibly imagine exists right now in the field. It's just about you energetically tuning to it. The people that want to attract something into their life, the question they want to ask themselves is, becoming aware of what's in your energetic field is one of the most empowering things that you can become aware of. Right now, everything is about segmenting everything. It's about you are a part of this group, you are a part of this group, and you are meant to hate each other. I think it's important to guard your attention, to draw boundaries with things in your life that are draining your energy, and to put it more in yourself, what you're passionate about, and watch how much your life changes.
Aaron, welcome back.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
What is the CIA gateway process?
The CIA gateway process is these CIA documents that came out that had been unclassified or declassified for years. People can go online and check it out. But basically what these documents show is the power of doing mind and heart coherence meditations focused on specific intentions and how that can expand your consciousness, even affect reality in a very powerful way. So back in the day, what happened is the CIA actually wanted to be able to explore espionage and be able to like spy on different places.
Like see if remote viewing is possible, essentially.
Exactly, like astral projection, remote viewing.
Under Project Stargate, I think it was like a larger project they were just exploring consciousness around, right?
Something like that. Yeah, I didn't go into the detail of like exactly which one it was, but I remember reading the documents and it was showing basically their intention behind doing it. But then what they did is they had a whole entire report of what they learned through going into these remote viewing experiences and going through these basically guided meditation processes for expanding their consciousness. So it's something that revealed more about what reality might be. And it's something that also really expanded their sense of the way reality works and how we can influence it in a very positive or powerful way.
So if I'm understanding correctly, they kind of presumed or just took the notion that reality might be more holographic in nature.
Yes.
And if consciousness could, in theory, travel beyond the body, how could they, for the U.S. Army in the 1980s, when they were studying this, potentially use it for like espionage or all these different things? And there were some very interesting findings and applications through the process of meditation, breath, and sound. And so how did you first hear about it? I'm curious, and what was it like when you started looking into the practices more?
Yeah, it was an interesting process for the way I came across like these tapes in general. Basically what happened is I was starting to grow on YouTube back in 2017. I think I probably had about 100,000 subscribers at the time. Was making consciousness content, talking about spirituality. And then what happened is my mom's dad, her foster dad growing up, which is like, I guess, my grandpa, he was always a very esoteric thinker. He was someone that was always kind of, he had like a spiritual undertone to the things he was into. He was into like Qigong and different type of like ancient practices. And he was always kind of a mysterious role model in my life because I grew up kind of being around him. And I remember seeing Edgar Cayce books that were like laying around the house. I don't know how I remember that, but I remember seeing them laying around when I was growing up. And basically, he was always mysterious to where we never really knew what he did for a living because he would travel hundreds of times a year to some undisclosed place where we never knew what it was. And we just kind of knew that he worked for some organization or some government thing. And then it was kind of like the end of it. And what happened is he retired and he was like in his 70s, and I'm now starting to, you know, get bigger on YouTube, and he found my videos because my mom was so excited about my videos and he started watching them. And that's when my grandpa and I began to connect more. And what happened is he started coming over, and I would see him every couple months. And it was kind of like a spiritual mentor in a way, because he was into this kind of spiritual like dimension of things, and then also kind of like mysterious because we never really knew what he did for a living. Well, I find out through basically interacting with him the last couple of years of his life, that he worked for some behind the scenes thing where he saw some, like, I know it sounds kind of abstract the way I'm saying it right now, but he basically saw some things and experienced some things that are beyond what we even thought was like possible or could be connected to like ETs and things like that. It was pretty esoteric, some of it, but he's someone I knew pretty much my entire life. And when he was watching my videos, he said, if you were to get these meditation CDs, they would transform your life and expand your consciousness. Because one thing I used to say in my YouTube videos is, my name's Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. I said it in like my first 200 or 300 videos. Well, he was like, if you really want to expand your consciousness, get these meditation CDs from like the 80s called the Gateway Experience, and it will expand your consciousness. So him telling me all this, I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. So I went online and I looked up the Gateway Experience. And at the time, the only way I could find it was used meditation CDs, and they were $350. I was like, at the time they were used. They were $350 meditation CDs. And I was like, oh, I was thinking maybe they'd be like $60 online or something like that. It was like $350. I'm like, whatever. I trust my grandpa. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So what I did is I ended up getting these CDs, which are basically, there's wave 1 through wave 5. Their Gateway Experience is broken down into these different waves. And it's not like you get these meditation CDs and then you listen to one and then you're astral projecting the next day. It's a series of meditations that build on themselves to where you go deeper and deeper. So behind like the wave 4 and 5, that's where maybe the potential for remote viewing and astral projection is. But until then, you're doing a lot of different meditative practices, a lot of understanding how to control your focus, your breathing. There's different elements of what's called hemisync technology. Hemisync technology is a certain technology that Robert Monroe, who was the man that developed and patented the process and worked with physicists, and it's a very scientifically backed thing. It's not just like some woo-woo guy that's like, I want to make these meditation CDs. Like, there was a lot of credibility that went behind creating it. And basically, he created these CDs that have a specific process that you go through to basically transform and expand your consciousness. And I started to use these CDs and started to build upon basically, going in order. And there was one that really had a powerful effect on me. It was called repatterning. And the idea behind repatterning is that there's a certain frequency you get through by balancing the left and right hemisphere of the brains and then having the mind and heart coherence, where you get into a certain frequency that then allows you to have more influence over reality. So in the CIA document, what it talked about was how when you were in certain states of consciousness, you had more intention mixed with the elevated emotions that you feel had more influence over the holograms of reality. So if you think about it in the form of an energy field that goes around your body, and if you think about it by creating left, right, brain, and heart coherence by balancing out the hemispheres of the brain and connecting to your heart, it's like that increases the intensity of the thoughts and the energy within your energetic field, which pulls to you different synchronicities, opportunities, and things that are in alignment with that energy. So what it talked about in the Gateway Experience, and by the way, the Gateway Experience is what Robert Monroe, who was the man that founded the company of Hemisync and the Gateway Process, which are a series of meditations for transformation. That's separate than the CIA documents. The CIA documents are just people from the CIA that were using the Gateway Experience to explore consciousness, to eventually maybe use it to spy on different countries or on with different purposes. And that's their experience of using these meditation CDs. So with that, what I ended up doing is going through and using these meditation CDs. And one of the ones that had the biggest impact on me was the repatterning one, which the idea is you repattern your consciousness. You repattern what you're creating in your life, and you feel it as if it's already happening now. And I began doing that for a month or two in a row. I would do it every single day, and there was a different feeling that would come inside of my body. I started feeling more in an equal connection to what I wanted to create in my life. And that really, I would say, was one of the cornerstones from me going where I was on YouTube with like 100,000 subscribers to things blowing up at a bigger and bigger level. I attribute quite a bit of it to the meditations I was doing, and more specifically to the mind and heart coherence, which I'd learned through that of this gateway experience process.
It seems, I mean, we've explored this theme with many previous guests about how our brain can essentially attune with an intention, like an antenna, that then our heart can, as it's a magnetic device, can then charge that intention with and bring different realities to us. And it's one thing in theory, it's another to actually put it to practice and experience the fruit of that. And then you realize this like game of life is kind of like that. It's like by really attuning yourself and finding that place of coherence, you then have the capacity at greater and greater levels to magnetize towards you what things that are like meant for you and things that are aligned with you coherently. And so it's a very interesting process. And I know we could probably share stories upon stories where this has both happened in our life, right? Because that process with the CIA gateway process, or the hemisync technology, are one of many different tools and practices and ways in which we can, it's like a door into our own consciousness to be able to explore those realities in subtle realms. So how does this apply now to reality transurfing? Because I know it's a topic that you've also explored, and these are kind of esoteric topics, but I would love to ground it in as much as possible to see that in life, we're kind of born, incarnated into a society, culture, family, conditioning where we believe certain realities are possible for us because it's familiar and it's been normalized. And the more that you wake up and drop and shed identities and beliefs and dogmas that really aren't true or don't serve you anymore at your level of consciousness, then you can again go back and attune to what do I want to shape for my reality, the reality of the world, and you become an effective steward in that way. And so if you could help me break down that concept a little bit as it relates to really the audience and people that are tuning in right now, attuning to the life and reality they want to create for themselves.
Yeah. Now, let me first off say that I think a lot of this more kind of like cool things to look at, these different processes are all really cool in their own way. If you boil it all down, it comes down to connecting to the emotion and the visual intention of what you want to experience and elevating the emotion to feel as if it's here now. Now, the benefit of understanding parallel realities is that, which is connected to reality transurfing, is that when you think of parallel realities, it's under the notion that every reality you can possibly imagine already exists. You've got people like Joe Dispenza that call it the quantum field. You've got books like Reality Transurfing that call it the alternative space, or what's called the space of variations. Ultimately, everything you can possibly imagine exists right now in the field. It's just about you energetically tuning to it. Think of it similar to that of a radio dial. If you're on 98.5 FM and you want to experience something at 111 FM or something like that, some spiritual number for you, then what you would do is you recognize it already exists. You don't have to create 111.1 FM. It already exists. It's about energetically tuning to it. And just like we know, if we had a radio dial right here and we tune it to 111.1 FM, 111.1 FM is all around us right now. It's simply vibrating at a specific frequency, and once we tune to it, then we pick up on the frequencies that already exist. Well, when it comes to understanding parallel reality manifestation, what we can understand is that it already exists, that which we want to experience. So this is what I did back in 2017 when I went full-time on YouTube. I literally, how would the version of me think, feel, and act that already is a full-time YouTuber, not that wants to be a full-time YouTuber or really desires to be a full-time YouTuber or that's chasing YouTube success? What does that version of me think, feel, and act like? And then embody it. Give myself permission to be it. So when it comes to reality transurfing, which, a little backstory behind that, that is a book that was written in Russia by a quantum physicist. And basically in Russia, from what I understand, it's like the movie The Secret out here in the Western world. It's like in Russia, that's their version. And I came across this book because I met a guy at a coffee shop that was very successful that basically told me once again, like, if you get this book, Your life will change, just like my grandpa said it in a different way. And I got this book, and it was 600 pages long, and it was translated in English, and I started reading it, and there was just something about it that resonated with me. Now, something else I'll share with you, kind of behind the scenes. There's a reason I wasn't talking about reality transurfing for such a long time, and I guess I'll share that here because some people in my audience wonder why I talked about it in the beginning, because I made 80 to 100 YouTube videos talking about reality transurfing. Oh, wow. People found the book. You get DMs from people. I've literally had DM from somebody that was a business guy that had good sized following on Instagram. And he's like, I want you to know that I found your videos on reality transurfing 4 years ago, and I'm a multimillionaire now. I thought that was so cool. So he claimed that the concepts from this book made him extremely successful. And I was like, well, I can't talk about the book anymore. But basically, Reality Transurfing is a book that's about the main concepts, and then I'll get into the story here in a second. Basically, the main concepts of the book is that everything we can imagine already exists in what is called the space of variations. That when we really, really want something, we put it on a pedestal and we energetically separate ourselves from it. So one thing it talks a lot about is decreasing the level of importance. If something's really, really important, you really, really resist it and it's not equal to your identity. So there are balancing forces that come into our reality to literally block that thing from coming into your life.
It's just an important point I want to highlight, because when it comes to a partner, a potential relationship, or a career, or a lifestyle, or whatever it is that we're trying to make our current reality, that energetic shift of instead of grasping for something, which you, in many ways, you're resisting it, you're repelling it, because you're coming from the energy of not having. Once you say, I want something, you're acknowledging that you don't have it, versus kind of flipping it on its head, like you're speaking to, and feeling and thinking and acting in the way of already having it.
Right.
So keep unpacking that, decreasing the level of importance. It's really interesting.
Yeah, decreasing the level of importance is... I'll tell a little story about this. I remember one time I was learning about the ideas of reality transurfing and understanding, this idea of the space of variations and decreasing importance. And at the time, I just started to become more successful on YouTube. And what I did, as I was living in Las Vegas, I was getting a house that I was going to live in as my own house, kind of close to the airport. And I was on the rental market looking at what was available. And there weren't that many nice houses available. Found this one house that I liked. It had like blue, like kind of aesthetic feel to the house. It had like Zen decorations, even though the house wasn't going to be furnished. The people that owned it had this very Zen Buddhist kind of vibe, and it just felt like a house I wanted to be in. It was a 4-bedroom house. It was kind of close to the airport, well located, and I really wanted it. Now, at the time, the real estate agent's like, well, there are like 5 applications on this house right now. There's a lot of people that want it, and at the time, I didn't know if I was going to get it, because also when sometimes people see that it's a younger guy, I was like 28 at the time, they might assume I'm going to party even though I'm just focusing on my business, But basically, what I did is I remember walking through the house. I knew that I wanted it. And then what I did, I'm reading Reality Transurfing, and I'm reading these idea of decreasing level of importance. So what I would do is I would visualize myself in a meditation, being in that house, getting up where the master bedroom was, going to the bathroom, going to make videos where I would make videos where the lighting was good. And I would visualize it as if it's natural. It's not on a pedestal. It's not this amazing house I'm going to be able to live in. It was just natural for my identity. And then what I did is another aspect of reality transurfing is something that's called inner and outer intention. Now, basically what I did in order to tap into getting that house is, what is the inner intention of the person that's renting out the house? So that'd be like my external intention. But the idea is that it's almost like the way that I phrased this, and what I ended up doing is writing a letter to the person that owned the house. And I said, hey, my name is Aaron. I focused on my business right now. I just want you to know you have a beautiful home. I would love to live in it. I would take great care of it. I'm kind of I just kind of doing my business thing right now. I wouldn't be having parties and stuff, and kind of expressed how the beautiful Zen Buddhist vibes I like and stuff. But basically that was also a concept from the book. Sent in that letter, visualized it as if it was natural for me to be living in that house. And then a week later, found out that I got the house. And it was kind of a cool moment because there was competition for this house. There were 4 or 5 other applications on it when I put down my request for it, but it was a process of me tapping into decreasing the level of importance and seeing it as natural. Now, funny enough as well, I always think of this girl that I used to work with when I used to work my sales job selling women's shoes at Nordstrom's. There was this friend of mine, and she noticed that anytime she would get into a relationship with someone, what would happen is within 1 week of being in a relationship with someone, she would get hit on like 20 times in a week by dudes. But for 2.5 years of being single, she would hardly ever get hit on at all, ever. And she said it was like it boggled her mind the way that it worked. But also, one way that I see it, and when I think of reality transurfing or just decreasing the importance, it's like she's in the energy of abundance. She's not desiring a relationship or people to like come around that way. So because she's in the energy of it, and maybe she's already feeling gratitude for it, and maybe it's not important that people do hit her up or she has options, it's like it's just naturally there. And I think when it comes to having magnetic energy in general, it's very important to remember that anything we make important is energetically separate from us, but it's also with this notion that that thing over there is going to make us happy on the inside. So the balancing forces of the universe can't help but keep it from you, because it's like you haven't learned the lesson. It's like if you have a dog and you're chasing a dog, what does the dog do? Just runs away from you, right? It's playing the game. It's playing off that energy dynamic. Well, in the same way, if someone goes on a date and they're wanting someone to meet their needs, and it's really important that they like them and that they validate them, they're creating all this resistance, and that resistance actually blocks that which you want.
Yeah, it's like in the case of a relationship, trying to search for security and healthy attachment through the energy of insecurity and of not having.
Right.
I'm curious what you think of the balance between like realizing we're a creator of reality and we can have an intention and powerfully manifest things. Oftentimes earlier on in spiritual people's journey, it's, at least in the West, kind of directed towards materialistic purposes of trying to attract or make more money or whatever thing. There's that, but how do you balance that with the feeling of trust and surrender that what's meant for you will be yours, and what's not meant for you, you will never have? And taking the pressure off of trying to create your reality and kind of recognize the inherent abundance around you, and allowing to be surprised by the universe in a way. So how do you balance between intentionally manifesting and attracting what you want versus what you're speaking to also, which is like kind of letting go of it and understanding that that's a powerful way to live, but perhaps a more powerful way to live is to also release the unending need for improvement and to be, in the deeper state of gratitude and appreciation.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Because one thing I noticed is that a lot of times with people that are really adamant about creating their own reality, the law of attraction, manifestation, one thing I notice is that a lot of times the people that are really into this kind of work also went through a lot of trauma earlier in life. They may have had a spiritual awakening, be into understanding that we're spiritual beings living temporary human experiences. But I can't ignore the fact that even within myself, of me being called to it, especially years ago, there was a certain part of me that wanted to feel more like I was in control. There was a part of me that could feel like, this is what I want to create. I feel like I'm in control. I experience it. And then it's like I feel safety. So it's almost like trying to create a sense of safety through my manifestations, because if anything unknown were to happen, that's the scary stuff. And what if what you could actually experience in your life was so much better than what you can even imagine, but we block it because we're like, no, I want my manifestations. It's on my vision board. I've been thinking about it. I've been feeling it. And the way that I look at this is kind of simple in the stage that it's basically about, are you attached to outcome, or are you present to the moment and enjoying the process? If you follow your excitement and you're in the vibration of your passion, loving what you do, what you are in the vibration of is in the vibration of being. You're in the vibration of embodiment. You are being this version of you because it's who you choose to be, not of what the result will get you. And what a lot of people do with the law of attraction is they're focusing on what they want, and they're trying to, in a way, control reality, because then they can feel safe, and because the future moment that they get to is going to be better than this moment right now. And what happens a lot is people end up robbing themselves of the joy in the present moment and just following the passion because they're trying to get somewhere else that's going to be better. So the way that I work with this is I follow the thread of excitement, knowing that it's not my job to control how things happen. It's my job to focus on my energy state. It's my job to focus on my vibration, my energy, and knowing that I'm following that because it actually feels good, not just because it's going to get me somewhere else. And I think where a lot of people get caught up is they do it because how long do I have to do the visualizations for? And how long do I have to do this passionate thing for until I get there?
Yeah, like a means to an end.
It's a means to an end. And anytime things are a means to an end, that's where attachment is. And attachment is what creates resistance. Attachment to, I want to attract the partner like this. This is how it's going to happen. I'm going to go to a coffee shop. I'm going to see them at the coffee shop and they're going to say this. And then we're going to have this beautiful connection. It's going to work out. Meanwhile, you're on the way to the coffee shop and someone asks you for directions and you're like, you're not the person. You know what I mean? Like I'm just focused on getting to the coffee shop for that experience. And it's like people end up blocking them from experiencing more magic in their life because they're trying to control it all, trying to, in a way, regulate their nervous system through the manifestations of what they create, but they end up creating more resistance in the process. So I think the most powerful thing to do is to focus more on the process and to realize that it's more of an energy state that you're in because it's who you choose to be. Like even when I was making videos in 2017, it wasn't just making videos because eventually I quit my 9-to-5 job. I'm like, oh, this energy is who I choose to be. And what's funny is most of the time when people are in that being vibration and they're not just doing it for views, they're not just doing it for that purpose, it ends up working out much better. Like it ends up actually happening. Very rarely is it someone that's like, I'm going to get on YouTube to become a famous YouTuber that becomes a famous YouTuber, right? It's normally people that are like, they feel a calling. It's just who they are. Even when back in the day, I remember listening to people that are like really big YouTubers. Like, I just want to make the best videos possible. I just want to make the best videos possible. But it's not necessarily like, I need to get the most views possible. I need to get the most views possible. It's more process oriented. It's like, there's probably a love to making videos, you know? And I think that that's a lot of times where people block. And also when you think of attachment, importance is an end result. Attachment is an end result. And the focus is instead on who you are being. That's where the energy shifts.
Yeah, I think there's a big energy shift too also when you're coming at trying to attract things continually on just service to self versus service to others. And I feel like there's a big amplification process when you are, because you are a part of the collective, like we are an individual being having a collective experience and we are part of the collective. And so service to self also, or service to others also includes us as part of that process. But I do feel like there's an amplification process there and there's a balance. Like I do think our desire is kind of, in a lot of ways, like being under the illusion of separation or having the, projecting our desires onto a carrot of the end of a stick saying, I want this, kind of moves us in the direction of seeing what doesn't work for us and our own shadow material. And like, it's a process of moving towards realizing the feelings that already exist inside of us, you know? And so it's like you said, powerful at times in our journey to, you know, make the vision board, write down what we want. But it's really the feelings behind all the things we want in the first place. Right. And so it's like, I just want to, you know, really highlight that point you said, which is the feelings behind the things that we want. If we can just allow life to potentially surprise us in a way that is greater than we could predict, because our imagination is always just a recombination of past memory, you know, and life, if we want it to unfold greater than we could ever dream, then it's got to unfold in those ways that we can't really predict. And so it's a balance. It's kind of holding that paradox of like saying, you know, this is what feels the most true, following the highest path of excitement in this moment. But not being attached to how things appear and form.
100%.
So I really love the balance of having both perspectives because it's a more holistic, I think, approach and takes some of the pressure off the people feeling like they need to control life.
And think about it too. In the people that want to attract something into their life, the question they want to ask themselves is, why do you want that thing in your life? Like, what emotions do you want to feel? Because if someone's like, well, I want more money, I want the relationship, I want this, I want that. Why do you want that? If you get down to the core, you want it because of some emotion you will feel if you had it. Now, the funny thing is, you can feel those emotions right now. You could. It's just that the brain has an expectation that I will not feel this until this happens. And the focus is what literally blocks the feeling from being primed into the energetic field. Like if I were to tell you right now and like I were to prank Andre and it'd be this funny joke where I got with some friends and I was like, here's your lottery tickets or something. Not that this is even a thing. It's a bad example because I don't think you would even care about this, but I was like, it's a prank to you and you thought that you won the lottery and you're looking at the ticket and you're like, oh my God, I just won $100 million.
I would definitely care about that.
Okay.
By the way.
I thought you transcended money to like a different level.
Definitely not.
But it would be like, you'd be like, oh my God. And you would feel this crazy elated motions for like the 2 hours until one of us was like, had the nerve to be like, hey, Andre, just so you know, it was a joke. Joke's on you. And then you're like, oh, there'd be a crushing feeling that would come down of that adrenaline dump after all that excitement. Now, the funny thing is we all have those emotions inside of us right now. It's just that we don't give ourselves permission to feel it. So instead of that, what I recommend for people that want to create their dream reality is focus instead on priming your energetic field for the emotions you want to experience more of. So it's like, I want to attract a relationship for, to have a person there. Okay, well, where in your life do you already have connections? Whereas you might have a great connection with your animal or with your best friends or your family, or you focus on that. And as you're able to focus on that, you start to feel that energy of that gratitude. And the emotion of gratitude says, this thing is already in my life now. It's literally a signal to the universe that says, thank you for this being in my life now. So if you can feel grateful for something before it's in your life, you will experience more synchronicities and opportunities that reflect that energy state. So focusing on the field, I think, is so powerful. Same for money. Money may bring security. You have the freedom to go eat the food that you want right now. You have freedom to go walk at the park. You have freedom. But the key is like, what are you using that for? How are you focused on that? And how are you embodying that?
And there's many practices, from the saying what you're searching for is searching for you is a really practical notion when you understand neurology and how our brain works, and when the more that we have gratitude for what is in our life through the reticular activating system in our brain, we start to pay attention and notice more things that we can be grateful for. Yeah. And it's both, we become more grateful for what's in our life. And then also we create realities where gratitude is a reciprocating emotion to that thing. So yeah, it's a powerful thing to live life from the inside out in that way, instead of continually grasping from the outside in. Now, I want to shift this a little bit more to the collective consciousness before we, go back into the personal a little bit, because I found this understanding of pendulums really, really interesting. Yeah. And especially at this current time with the elections and over the past 40 years as the rise of the internet, technology, social media, more now than ever before, there has been the capacity to influence mass consciousness positively or negatively. And I just found this idea of thought forms very fascinating. So what is that? Yeah. So let's go in for a minute back into reality transurfing. And then I have a story that I promised I would share earlier that I have to kind of tailor back to. So first off, one of my favorite concepts in reality transurfing is this idea of what are called pendulums, which are these thought forms, these mass thought forms. In a way, you could think of it similar to archetypes within our reality in certain ways. Like there's certain archetypes that certain people embody. The idea in reality transurfing of pendulums is that when there's a lot of people in the collective consciousness focused on certain things, it creates a momentum of energy towards that thing. Now, there's pendulums or thought forms around the major things that many of us are focused on. There's pendulums around presidential candidates. There's thought forms around, or these pendulums around sports teams. There's thought forms around YouTube channels. Your podcast is a pendulum in of itself. And the idea is that these pendulums create a momentum. And that with this momentum, people sometimes think they're thinking their own thoughts when they may be thinking the thoughts of the pendulum because it's active inside their field and because we're all connected to the collective consciousness. Now, the thing with pendulums is that you can't fight them and win.
Pendulums become this thing that takes on a life of its own because there's thousands of millions of people focused on it. So anytime you fight a pendulum or you fight these mass thought forms, you actually feed it, you fuel it.
A big example of this is people that go down the conspiratorial rabbit hole and they fight against the parasitical elite as the reasons for everything being wrong.
It grows it.
It does.
I think people get so caught up with conspiracy theories, and what are they projecting onto that reality? They have all the power. They have all the power. It's almost like the drama triangle of the perpetrator, rescuer, victim. And it's like, they're the perpetrator with all this power. And I think it ends up infusing more of that power than they actually have, but it ends up fueling it.
I experienced this personally like 8 years ago, kind of before I moved out here. I was with a group of guys where, you know, there is value in understanding what's happening in life and things that are, but to have it to be consumed by it and to feel that you're also part of being controlled by it, then you are feeding it in that way. And I felt that at that time in my life where, you know, I felt like there were these darker, you know, forces at play, whether it's a demiurge or like all these things, you know, it's like, I don't know what the reality of what is actually there and what the intention of certain, you know, I think that largely now I've come to see that what we kind of often attribute as malice can be just attributed to ignorance. You know, there is like a lot of unconscious shadow material that's happening through influential individuals. Right. And there are people that are also have, you know, malice intent too, I'm sure, you know, and so it's like, and what do I want to do to have power over reality and influence things in the positive light? Like go on the process of creating pendulums or thought forms that bring people towards self-realization.
Exactly, yeah. You know? Yeah, I had that same realization when I was living in Vegas before I moved, and it was during the time of COVID. And when everything was happening, I had my own perspective of it, not in like a fearful way, but what I was doing is I noticed the pendulum of people getting in a lot of fear. And it felt like when people are in fear and anger, they're a lot easier to control. So I went on Instagram, I was going live, and I was talking about this, and it created such a polarity in people. I mean, people got so angry that I was even questioning things that were happening, the intensity of like the dynamic of everything that was happening. And it became so intense that I kind of had to decide, is it my purpose to make people aware of these things that maybe doesn't align with my intuition of what I think is actual, which by the way, years later actually was proven out to be pretty true with how things were exaggerated and everything. But nonetheless, it was like I had to ask myself the question, is this my purpose? Because I noticed that my dreams were getting darker. There were a lot of projections from people in my audience. And I was like, I can handle this. But at the same time, do I want to be preaching this resistance of like fighting the system? Or instead, do I talk about the other things that I'm actually passionate about that actually brings me more fulfillment, like raising vibration and healing energy and stuff like that? So anyways, I went through something kind of similar where I got caught up in the web of it, you know?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, when it comes to these thought forms and these, the idea is that the only way you can defeat them is by observing them. You just observe them. Doesn't mean you have to seek to observe, but it's like if you're watching a sports team and you are wanting a team to win and you're really identified with that and they lose, there's like a lot of energy that's being dispelled into that, and you may, you know, lower your energy. But if you're observing it, you're not going to be as emotionally affected by it.
Observing it and working towards creating the new reality, like Bucky Fuller's quote, which has been shared so much. You know, not fighting old systems, but make new ones that make the old ones obsolete.
Yeah, or Mother Teresa that said like, you know, she wouldn't go to like a protest, but like something for talking about love. It's kind of the same idea. It's like we can either focus on like tearing down what already exists. Maybe that makes people aware of it, but it also creates more resistance versus focusing on what reality do you want to create. We're already aware that this reality isn't working, you know? And the idea behind pendulums is that there's these thought forms around different people, presidential candidates even. So the funny thing is that when people don't like a presidential candidate under this idea of pendulums and the mass thought forms, what they do is they say, I don't like you, I'm resistant to you. They end up feeding that. And it ends up actually helping that cause, and then it causes more polarity. But in general, the one with the strongest pendulum wins, whether it's for or against it. Which
Think of like Kanye.
Right.
Or like, or, you know, Trump, or like a lot of polarizing figures that, for better or worse, they are attracting a lot of energy.
It's a lot of energy, whether you love them or hate them. It's energy that it moves something inside of you. And the idea behind Pendulum has been a game changer with understanding where I put my energy. Like, even I think about this sometimes, this is a more esoteric thought, but when you listen to a lot of mainstream music, and especially certain types of mainstream music, I feel like there's almost similar thought forms, similar energies that you're likely to pick up on by listening to that. In the same way, I think listening to maybe certain mantras or certain things that are done with like a holy divine reverence, it's like there's thousands of people in our collective consciousness or millions of people in the past that have meditated on like peace and love, doing certain mantras. You can also use it in a positive way. So I'm kind of aware of when I get songs stuck in my head, like, not that my energy's so feeble that I'm just gonna get sucked into something, but I am aware of like the energy behind these things, because I think that also the subconscious mind is something that runs our life. And the subconscious mind, there's these different metaphors in our reality that we connect to. And the gateway experience, a lot of those meditations are just influencing and interacting with your subconscious mind. But I think it's important to be aware of what these things represent to us.
It's so important, man. I feel like in the way that our subconscious regurgitates whatever is impressed upon it in our life is so, like, I was just with a group of my friends, and for whatever reason, like I'm kind of like a parrot. Like I'm always hearing whatever's happening in my surrounding, and then I just start like humming it or singing it or like whatever, just like without even realizing it. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I was like ba-da-ba-ba-ba, and I was like, why that? My friend's like, why did you just hum like the McDonald's like theme song? We must have like just passed one and I saw it or whatever the case was. Like, why is that in me? Why did that come out without even my awareness? And it's because there are these thought forms that live within us, and that our subconscious will then, whatever is impressed must be expressed in that way. And so it's very interesting. I lived with Logan and worked with Logan and Jake Paul for a while, and I feel like there are two individuals that have really understood building momentum, whether you like them or like not. They're polarizing individuals that really do have those pendulums. And there's a lot that you can be learned through observing the mechanism of how that works. If your desire is to raise the collective consciousness and spread metta, loving kindness meditation, or have these kind of conversations on podcasts that uplift people, there is a mechanism that can be applied just as infection spread, just like love can spread and be contagious, and that in a similar kind of spreading is very interesting to observe.
Yeah. And to, I remember thinking of that back when Logan Paul was growing so fast on YouTube, and even Jake Paul, about the pendulum, because I was learning about reality transurfing at the time. And I think it's very important when you have a lot of attention and a lot of energy to be very aware of how that energy is being embodied, because anytime the collective or there's too much energy and focus put on a certain energy, it brings it down to decrease the level of importance of it. So it's interesting, because I think with YouTube channels, even what we do with our pendulums, it's like we have to keep the focus on the energy flowing through, on adding value to the collective, because if it becomes too self-focused and that resistance gets created, and then it takes us off the pedestal and puts us back down to equal, But that's one thing I found interesting with this whole idea of pendulums. Now, to take that story that I need to pay off, because I keep mentioning it, one of the reasons I didn't talk about reality transurfing for so long is one of the things it says in the Reality Transurfing book is that this idea of reality transurfing itself is a pendulum. It's a thought form. It's this thought form. People get really passionate about reality transurfing, the people that are in it, and then they're living according to the lifestyle, which means like focused on basically being the identity of who you want to be, understanding that the reality you want to experience already exists, and observing your thoughts, observing the pendulums and the thought forms, all of that. And one of the things that happened is after about 80 videos, I made about 100 YouTube videos on reality transurfing, basically promoting the book for free. And what happened is there were one or two people that represented the company of reality transurfing that didn't like that I was starting to look like authority on the figure, even though I wasn't saying I'm a reality transurfing coach and this is who I am. That created resistance. And what ended up happening is they wanted me to take down all the videos, and they wanted me never to talk about reality transurfing again. For a few months, I was even on the website. It was just this weird drama thing where I'm like, all I want to do is like send people to this book, and it said that the book is a pendulum. So it was kind of weird to me that people from the company were coming after me when it says in the book that this is a pendulum that I don't own. No one owns it. It's of the collective consciousness. Here I am teaching the ideas, but then also being told you can't, you like, please don't talk about it anymore, because the reason was, I guess it made me look like an authority, and the Reality Transurfing coaches wanted to be the authority on it. But I'm like, well, then to make the videos, like, you know what I mean? But for 2 or 3 years, I didn't talk about it. And then eventually I think the person that represented that was a part of that, because the guy speaks Russian. So the people that represented him, they're now kicked out. So whatever happened with them, but now I feel more free to talk about it. So if the person that is the, Vizim Zealand, the author, ever sees this, it's like, I love the book, love the concepts, and it's, I think it's good for everyone to be able to share the concepts and to have that information.
It's good, man. Just one thing that I think can kind of tie a bow on the whole pendulum thing is inviting everybody who's listening right now to really observe what thought forms or pendulums, if you want to use those terms, are influencing us currently. Like what?
Right.
And we spoke to like how whatever is impressed upon our subconscious, that carries momentum into our life. And so the music and the media that we're taking in, social media and our phones, it's never been as easy to be influenced than it is right now. And so there requires, with as much access to information, wisdom to guard and shield what information and where it's coming from into our reality. So if we desire to have original thought and be like a sovereign individual, then it requires us to really be mindful with where we're taking information, how much we're taking in information. And it's just, I think, an important thing to wrap up that section on.
Absolutely. I think that becoming aware of what's in your energetic field is one of the most empowering things that you can become aware of, because ultimately, if you perceive on the outside of certain things in your life and it makes you feel a certain way, taking responsibility is understanding that the way you feel is something that's inside your energy field. So if somebody is jealous of someone else, or someone else is feeling resistance for something they're seeing, there's a couple ways that you can go about mitigating that. You could set boundaries and not have that energy around you, not being perceiving of it, or you could integrate that energy of what you're feeling on the inside and transform it and kind of let go of the perspective. But one thing that I think is so overlooked is people continue, like being in the phone all day, what you look at does influence your subconscious mind. I remember watching a show called Succession like a year or two ago when it was a big show, and it's all basically a show about narcissism, and like these people fighting over this kingdom of this dad's like $billion empire. But I remember just the effect it was having on how I viewed people and how I viewed like money and abundance. Like it was shifting different perspectives I had throughout the week because I was binge watching it, I could see that effect that it had on me. And I think a lot of times people are just consuming from a mindless place, or consuming from a place where they're not aware of how that's influencing their energy, because they haven't tapped into their body to see, like, how does this feel? How is this going to influence what I experience more of in my life? So one of the best things you can do is be kind of a gatekeeper for where your focus goes. Where your focus goes is where your energy goes. And I think pendulums and this whole idea of like wrapping the bow on this, it's like wherever you put your focus is where you put your energy. And marketers know this very well, like companies and products. And it's the reason you go to a Super Bowl commercial, they might charge millions and millions of dollars for 30 seconds of our time, because they know that even if just us focusing our attention on it grows the idea within the collective consciousness. So I think the other side of this coin here is when we all come together for mind and heart coherence, and we focus on what we want to create in the world. And that's why, like the Maharishi effect of the meditation effect, the Maharishi effect of having thousands of people focused on mind and heart coherence, bringing more peace and love into the world, can have such a powerful effect on the planet, where the decrease in violent crimes can go down by a substantial percentage. That's because all of us are unifying, which is so different than what has been currently in our collective consciousness. Right now, everything is about segmenting everything. It's about, you are a part of this group, you are a part of this group, and you are meant to hate each other. When in fact, if you have somebody that likes one football team and someone that doesn't and hates that football team and they're rivals, if they were to be on like a different planet or something like that, they would have so much in common. They both not only are humans, but they like football. Like that's a lot to have in common, but we're so identified with separation and we've been so preconditioned to believe we are these separate identity egos that what we do is we create resistance and end up creating more challenges and blocks for ourselves in that process. And then we're much more easy to control. Whereas we look at a lot of the stuff happening in the government and at different political levels, and it's like a lot of us probably know there's something off here. Maybe something needs to be completely switched up, but it's everyone's divided, everyone's kind of separated on these different perspectives, and what that does is it keeps us from keeps the pendulums alive. So I think it's important to guard your attention, to focus your energy on the things you want to create in your life, to draw boundaries with things in your life that are draining your energy, to maybe limit what you put your attention on with your phone, because that's literally just growing other people's things, other people's ideas, and to put it more in yourself and what you're passionate about, and watch how much your life changes.
Amazing. So good, man. Yeah. It really feels like it's doing a disservice to our own soul's evolution to constantly be bombarded with noise and information that is not really serving us. And if we all have a unique essence that wants to emerge, just like we all have a thumbprint that's unique to us, we all have a creative pulse, a perspective that the universe gains through our eyes that is really sad to not have realized or actualized. And I do believe it is an inevitable process. Like however much we need to forget or believe the illusions of separation between us, like we will eventually come to know our who we are. But this human birth is such a gift. And to not take advantage of the opportunity we have of being alive, to make space to like observe what wants to come from within instead of just what wants to be put in through other people's intentions. Yeah, it's just a really important thing, because we're on the path, and obviously this being the Know Thyself podcast, like our listeners, people that are tuning in right now to this community, we all want to explore and uncover and realize more of who we truly are. And I think I'd love to reflect on identity with you, because as you start to grow up in your 20s and 30s, or whenever you first start to realize that certain ideas and dogmas that were really just a product of the environment in which you grew up in don't serve you to how they used to, there is a shedding process, a letting go of who we thought we once were, and the grander realization of who we are in a deeper core and deeper essence. And I know that for you and for me, like we're constantly going through these cycles and seasons of identity and of self, just like all of nature moves in cycles and seasons, from the macrocosm, like cosmological level of planetary movements, to us on the microcosm in our own human developmental journey. There are these cycles, and I feel like there are the small cycles, monthly cycles for men and women. There are yearly cycles. There are 7 to 10 year cycles where there's bigger shifts in identity. I think that everybody right now who's listening is in a certain season and chapter of their life, and often because you're in it, you don't realize what chapter of life you're in until it's kind of behind you in a way, connecting the dots, looking back in that way. But how have you been able to invite more grace in the transitions between identities? Because I think that is a sticking point for a lot of suffering for a lot of people, is that there is like a death of the old self, not having fully emerged in the new version of you. And so how does realizing the inherent cycles of life that are a part of us, that we are a part of, invite some more grace into the transitions?
Yeah, for me, when I think of the journey that I've been on, which by the way, I recently became aware that pretty much I've been on YouTube now for 7 or 8 years. And this last year has been a big pivotal shift for me, where I'm realizing that the things that got me to where I'm at now aren't going to be the things that get me to the next level. I just feel kind of stagnant. I felt like I'm kind of thinking, feeling, acting equal to an old identity that served me for a long time and brought me a lot of success and abundance and fun and joy. But it's felt like kind of like it's time to shed it. And there's been a fear around letting that part of me go. The fear is this reoccurring dream that I have, that every so often, every couple months, I have this dream that I'm back in my 9-to-5 job selling women's shoes. And it's some part of this dream where like I'm there selling shoes like I used to at Barney's New York or in Nordstrom's and women's shoes. And I'm a full-time YouTuber with success and abundance but I'm there. And I know that. I'm like, why am I here? Right? And this reoccurring dream comes up for me every couple months when I know I'm not taking action in the full capacity I could to be establishing a new reality. So for me, the 9-to-5 job represents a certain energy. And what I did with my 9-to-5 job is started making YouTube videos, quit my 9-to-5 job within 6 months, created all this abundance, but I put pressure on myself to stay in my metaphorical 9-to-5 job, which means making certain number of videos a week, staying relevant on Instagram and YouTube by posting a lot of content. And there's this certain like hamster wheel that I stay on because it's familiar. And what I've become aware of recently is just simply knowing that my life is this other realm that I get into when I get into more of my zone of genius of stepping into the unknown. That's where I really feel fulfilled. That's also where the best content I create comes out, is when I'm in situations like this where we're having a conversation. And it's different than me standing in front of a camera talking like I've done for 2,000 YouTube videos now over the last 7 years. So one of the ways that I go about shifting my identity is through catching myself when I'm in the energies of trying to stay addicted to the familiar. It's almost like it's familiar for me to be in a 9-to-5 job, and it's familiar for me to put the pressure on myself to continue making lots of videos and always staying busy. And the other day when you texted me, I was doing my best that day not to do any work whatsoever. I think I told you I went to a hyperbaric chamber, and it was funny. I go into this hyperbaric chamber. I've been to one in Austin before where you were allowed to have your phone. So I was like going to listen to a meditation, and I get to this place here in LA, and they're like, you can't bring your phone or anything in there. And I'm like, what? I've 90 minutes with no phone or anything in this little glass pod. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I put it to the side. I get in, and there's this TV above this glass pod, and he's like scrolling on Netflix trying to help me find something to watch. And I'm like, I don't want to watch anything after like 10 minutes, and it was so weird having someone else control the remote too. I was like, okay. So what I ended up doing is like just put on like a chill step, like some type of like relaxing meditation music, which is what I ended up doing. But what ended up happening is it was so uncomfortable for me to be kind of powerless inside this pod with no phone for 90 minutes. And it was an interesting experience that brought up so much for me. Like also when he walked away, I'm like, you couldn't hear anyone. Even if I were to like yell, no one could hear me. I thought this must be what babies feel like when they don't know if someone's gonna come back. You know, like imagine your parents aren't around and you're a baby crying. And I'm thinking like, so I'm going through this whole process of realizing all of this. And it was a part of me being able to really go inwards, to really look and audit my life, because I realized how stimulated I had become from being on the content hamster wheel, from watching and being on my phone on Instagram or being on social media or being on watching Netflix or something like that. I realized that there hadn't been that time to really just go inwards to decide what is the next step. And as I was sitting there and as I was in this like state of not really being able to do anything, it was a process of me realizing that the answer has been within me the whole entire time, which is just really committing to the next stage for me, which is just doing a lot less of what I think I have to do to maintain a certain level of credibility and status, and doing a lot more of the things that I'm really passionate about, which includes running live events, recording them, doing podcasts, it's just a different way of making content. But I think that what a lot of people can do to really create that shift is really create space inside of yourself, because that space is where insight comes. That space is where you start to question yourself and to realize like, why am I doing all of this? And then asking questions and able to like, I was able to see that a lot of what I'm doing is just the autopilot familiar energy that's felt so normal. It feels normal for me to always be doing, which is another aspect of my self-worth I've become aware of recently, where I associate so much self-worth to what I do, but not who I am. So if I can add lots of value to people on YouTube videos, I'll be worthy. Then I'll be like establishing my life purpose, but it's almost like there's a subconscious part of me that's looking to my audience to know, am I valuable? Am I the rescuer in your life? Which is not something I'm consciously, I want to be anyone's rescuer, because I don't. But at the same time, there's like this awareness that self-worth you can be worthy for just being you, and you're not necessarily tied to what you do, and it's more so just something you inherently have because of who you are. And I think for me on this journey, knowing that this new identity that I get isn't going to be more worthy and more awesome, it's just something that's going to feel better. So I can feel better right now by saying yes to opportunities of things that are in my zone of genius, doing and running more live events or whatever that new identity is. And it does require a certain shift in consciousness. Like in 2017, thinking, feeling, acting equal to a job that I had for 10 years almost, bosses telling me when I had to come to work, having to schedule 2 weeks of vacation time, certain times of the year. It became normal. Having managers that were controlling and manipulative, that was normal. That was also familiar to my childhood dynamics. Things weren't fair when I was a kid. There was a power dynamic when I was a kid that I had a lot of power that was put over me. So it was very easy to see that, am I living in same familiar patterns, and am I fighting for it because it feels familiar? And eventually I had to get really honest with myself, and I had to make the choice to step into the unknown. And I had to also, that identity shift for me was creating more willpower. Instead of a boss telling me what to do, I have to be the self-starter. I have to become my own boss in a way. I have to hold myself accountable because I can't focus on a job telling me what to do. I have to do it. So that was the shift that was required for me to go to being a YouTuber. And then now from being a YouTuber for the last 7 or 8 years, it's this initiation that I have to reactivate towards running live events, scheduling them, getting all the systems set up and play, which does require some mental work and energy and growing the team. Whereas before with the whole YouTube thing, it's all on autopilot. It's all familiar. But I also felt kind of trapped in old ways of being, instead of now of having them that's doing it, the boss that's doing it, it's me doing it to myself. So there's no one to blame, So now that's been the most powerful thing for me when it comes to my identity, is creating space, questioning how I'm addicted to the familiar and why am I fighting for this? And then understanding that there's a new aspect or something new energy I can bring into my life by simply making a choice. Ultimately, that's all it is. It's a new choice of who you are. That's it. But we make it complicated because we want to understand every nuance and what part of my childhood trauma is this from and all of these things, when it can be so much more simple if we just give ourselves permission. And that's one of the main things, is give yourself permission to be a new you.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Yeah, it's an important reflection to just observe our compulsive urge to fill the space or silence whenever it arises in our life, and how compulsively we reach for stimulus. Because it's so familiar, and man, it's so easy in this day and age. I'm really excited to go back. I'm going back in silent retreat in a couple of months. And
how long are you going for?
10 days.
Is it like a Vipassana?
Yeah, it's going to be a Vipassana. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's so important because it's been a while since I did the last of a Vipassana. But like, especially when you work in this field of like being a spiritual educator, conduit for these conversations, podcaster, you're in this space, even in what some would view as like a really more impactful service to the planet. As an individual being in the process, just like you said, you're kind of like, you're transitioning out of just this YouTuber identity, and finding your inherent worth outside of these identifications. Like it's useful for a while to like wear the identity and play the role as the YouTuber, as the podcaster or whatever. But in ways we're not aware of, these things can insidiously kind of, like I think Gabor Mate referred to the mask eating into the face of the wearer. And not that like these things are masks, but it can be slowly insidious in the way that we identify as being this thing now. And we have to realize these things that we have, these personalities that we imbibe, these things too are not us. And just going back into that silence and just shutting the F up for a moment is so important.
Yeah.
But I feel you, man. It's like, it's so easier said than done. And thanks for the vulnerable share about the hyperbaric chamber, just because I think that a lot of people can relate.
Yeah, I'm surprised I shared that. It was such a dumb little thing, but it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, no, it's real. I feel like a lot of people, like these phones have just become cyborgs in so many ways.
Right.
They become
No kidding.
extensions of us.
And I was in denial. I'm like, I'm not that addicted to my phone. I'm not as bad as some people, because I've seen people that are in their phone like maybe 10 hours a day or something. So I'm like, I'm not that bad, But then sitting there just for like 10, 20, 30 minutes, I'm like, okay. And I'm like, if I knock, no one comes. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing I can really do, and I don't want to watch like television. It was such an interesting experience, The other thing I'll mention with the YouTuber identity that I had is recently my focus has been on me doing more live events and me like stepping into this new version of myself. But one thing I realized is, well, I'm still being and I still identify so much as a YouTuber when it comes to how I'm creating content. And what I realized is some of the people that are in my field that do kind of what I do, but are beyond just that of just doing YouTube, what I notice is a lot of them, their focus is on something else. It's not just that. And what I've chosen to do, instead of just focusing on YouTube and making videos, my passion is really doing live transformative experiences for people. So whether that's a live event where I'm coaching people on stage, whether it's a live coaching thing on Zoom, whether it's Instagram Live, even when I go and do an Instagram Live, it brings me to life a lot more than when I'm trying to make content with just me and a camera. So what I've been doing is following the focus of the vibration of that. So instead of being, I need to create videos as a content creator to get views, to keep my brand going, it's how can I help people transform through the content I make, and how can I engage with them more? Because ultimately, I feel the content is more in alignment when I'm engaging. Even just engaging with you and talking to you, it brings out a different part of me than when I'm just in front of a camera by myself. So recently, part of my insight is, well, if you want to move beyond this, you have to not just stop being this, but you have to put your focus on this, and then repurposing all those things on YouTube. So in the future, the way my YouTube channel will look eventually, once I get a few live events under my belt with having footage from it, there'll be clips on my YouTube channel from live events. And then I'm not just being this identity, I'm being this that's still, it's not like I'm not creating YouTube videos or content in my business, but it's changing the focus. So how would the version of Aaron that's passionate about transforming people's lives through teaching and group meditation, my most exciting thing for me to do is guided meditation experiences, live in person or even online. How do I facilitate more of that to help people transform? It's a very different question, and it's a very different focus. So what I would encourage people to do that are looking to change their identity or to shift their identity is look at who you're being. Are you thinking, feeling, and acting equal to a certain familiar identity? But what is a central focus you can have that comes with it, that identity? It feels also more pure for me to, think of the energy of making YouTube videos, getting views and keeping that momentum going versus helping people transform through the spaces created at live events or live, on coaching programs and stuff like that, like which feels better, which feels more of service, right? Feels more of service to focus on people's transformations first and then repurposing that. So that was also a big shift for me, is changing my focus and knowing that with that comes a shift in identity as well.
Yeah, just if energy flows where attention goes, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a revelatory process. Like it's a subtle unfolding of like a new insight that comes in or a direction that you slightly want to switch into. And then you start to give your attention and energy more in that direction, and then ideas come in, and then you start taking more action. And it's just fun to play with that field of possibility. And it's kind of a trip to think about, everything in this room was once an idea in somebody's head, and we live in a world where that's the reality of everything, right? And so there's just so much power when you realize that you have the capacity to create and shape reality as you desire. And man, there's just like infinite possibility.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting to feel into what's possible as we start to unlock and like reveal how much we have influence over reality. And so there's been a lot of themes we've been exploring throughout this whole podcast. What do you feel, what do you wish people to walk away from and realizing, having listened to this conversation, the most?
If I were to kind of recommend or have a desire for people to walk away with something from this episode, it would be that there are an infinite number of realities that exist. You are who you choose to be right now, right now, right now. Every moment's a new moment, and every moment you're a new version of you. Every moment, the cells in your body are dying and being reborn. Every so many years, not even one cell that was in your body 7 or 8 years ago is in your body now. But what holds us back is we keep telling ourselves a story. I am this limited identity. I'm attached to this old familiar story. This is who I am. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Keep recreating that experience of being stuck because we're so stubborn and attached to our old beliefs and what's familiar. So one of the most important things I think for people to realize is that you're only stuck if you believe you're stuck. You're only in the reality you're in because you're thinking, feeling, acting equal to the current reality that you've been in, and you decided in the past, this is who I am, and this is what I want to, maybe I haven't shifted into this new way of being now. But at a certain point, your beliefs can change. Your stories about life can change. Many people may at one time believe that the boogeyman was under their bed and going to get them. Well, then one day, hopefully, they realize that it's not happening or it hasn't happened, and their beliefs shifted. In the same way, our beliefs about our identity can shift now in the present moment as well. One other thing I'd mention that is maybe something I wanted to elaborate just for a second on is when it comes to the law of attraction and reality creation, I think it's a powerful stage where we realize that we don't have to be limited by the past and the past patterns. At the same time, I think there's a level where we allow the divine to flow through. The divine flows through, and it's not so much that we're focused on individual ego consciousness of having to create reality. So it's Andre that's going to create this, it's Aaron that's going to create this. It's more so allowing energy to flow through. I think the key to me making, honestly, 2,000 YouTube videos has been getting into a flow state and allowing information to come through. And I think everyone has the ability to get into a flow state, and that when you're in a flow state, you're in a high vibrational state. When you are connected to a vision greater than yourself, and that vision is connected to the divine, which we're all connected to, there's forces that come into play that help us to accomplish whatever we want to accomplish when we have an intention of adding value to others. So as I've moved through the last 7 or 8 years, I constantly bring myself back to how can I add more value? What wants to come through? I don't want to delude myself in believing that my ego knows exactly what it can manifest as and what needs to happen, and this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, all because I'm afraid of the unknown. When instead, I can become aware of the familiar patterns. I can become aware of what got me to where I'm at now. But the next stage for many people that I believe are listening to this right now might be for you to take the plunge into the unknown, for you to learn how to trust God, the divine, the energy within you to guide you in a specific direction. Maybe it's not your job anymore to let the ego continue to think it needs to be in the driver's seat. I'm not saying the ego has to get out of the car, but maybe get into the passenger seat and let the divine drive. And I think the thing I'm learning now is I look back at my YouTube channel where I made so many law of attraction videos back in the day. And as we were talking recently, it's like we go through different stages of evolution. Not that I believe we don't create our own reality, but I believe that we can more so get in alignment with the divine and allow information to flow through us. And there's very little preparation you need. There's very little control you need to infuse at all. When I'm doing live events or even live with you, the less preparation I do, the better, because it gets me into a flow state. And that's the most important thing. And everybody has the ability to get into a flow state. And when you focus instead on the divine and focus on adding value to other people, it's like you get in alignment with something that's greater than yourself. Because we're all connected, when you add value to others, that then comes back to you because that other person is another aspect of your consciousness. You really do get what you put out. So having the intention of helping others and being a conduit of the divine to flow through you, knowing even the success that you get isn't even yours to necessarily own. It's not something that just your ego did. Yes, you may have aligned with certain principles, but ultimately it helps us get out of our head. It helps us get out of the pressure that we create, the resistance, the importance, all of these things we talked about in this episode were all based on these ideas of the ego thinking it knows what's best. When in fact, if we were just to let it go and start to live in alignment, following the process, following the energy of passion, and focus on enjoying the moment and of being of service to others through our passion and through our energetic expression, we'd find that it has a different ripple effect in reality, and that then the universe is conspiring for us. The more that divine intention is there, the more you won't even understand how things come into your life because it'll come in such magical ways. But if we insist, it has to happen this way, we resist it. So allowing the divine to flow through you, not trying to take so much ownership over, I manifested this and I manifested that. It's all just a reflection anyways, and really you don't own anything. It's God, the universe, that's flowing through you. So when you step aside and you allow that to flow through, there's so much more power there than the significant ego that wants to feel like it has a certain level of control over reality. But like we talked about, it's a paradox because we also exist within this avatar form, so there is a certain focus that helps. There is a certain intention that helps. It's just not being overly identified with the results and the attachment to those results.
Mm. So many important reminders there, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I just feel into how many variations there are in people's lives right now, whatever we're going through as a parent, a new mother or father to a children, or starting out a new career, or just now exiting an old relationship. Like, we're all going through these different seasons of life, and ultimately I feel like the big takeaway from a lot of what you're saying is, as long as you move in the direction of where life is lighting you up currently the most, and you are patient with your life process, because thank God it's a gradual journey. If you realize, or if you knew how it was all going to happen, right? Like, it would take away the plot from the movie. There would be no excitement. There would be discovery. And I think there's something really unique that pain, suffering, loss, fear provides as a contrast in our experience of life. And so it serves a purpose. And that purpose, I feel like, often is the boundaries, is keeping us in alignment with where we're meant to be going. And I feel like the more that you're trusting in that process, like the more that you really give faith and surrender to what is unfolding in your life, and that you will be able to eventually connect the dots and see the understanding of how it all unfolded and why that relationship needed to come in and what it taught you about life, the more that you can walk with grace, which is something that I'm personally very interested in, is like living a graceful life, giving grace when somebody cuts you off in traffic, and like really understanding that they're in the energy of frustration or unconscious compulsory behavior because of whatever, who knows what could happen. A parent could have just died, maybe they're really struggling financially, and there's innumerable examples of how that can show up and how we offer grace back to life. And so I love all the themes we're talking to here, and that final reminder you gave of allowing, seeing what life wants of you in many ways as you're a co-creator with what you want of life is an important note to wrap up on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
What does grace mean to you?
It feels as though there is a more benevolent, greater intelligence that is weaving our lives.
Yeah.
And the more that we go from reactivity to responding, from unconscious compulsion to consciously observing and being open to what's happening in our life, I think the more that we go in this top-down approach of thinking we know how things are always working, instead of like living in the I don't know and the unknown, we make space for things to unfold more beautifully than they could. And I think that there's amazing grace in just observing nature do nature's thing, and finding alignment with our nature and our dharma in many ways allows us, at least in my personal life, I feel like, to find grace. And that shows in the form of amazing relationships and friendships that are born. My purpose and how I decide to show up in my career and life and impact in the world and so many different things. And so the more I make space, I think the more I find grace also.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it sounds to me, and when you were mentioning it, it sounds like it's almost like you're seeing through the eyes of Source in a way. It's like, how would Source look at this situation of someone cutting you off?
Right.
And it wouldn't be individual identity focused of like, this person did this to me. It's kind of looking at it from a larger perspective. And I think when we look at a lot of the things that can hold us back, like ancestral energy even, or patterns that are stored inside of our body that come from our childhood, understanding that everyone's doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they're at is a very powerful way to heal and to like release the energy that's stored inside of our own body. And it also allows us to shift more into forgiveness, which I think is one of the keys to really elevating our vibration to the next level. It's forgiveness. It's kind of what we talked about on the first episode we did of Ho'oponopono, but being able to forgive that energy that's in our field that we're holding on to. But it sounds like the way that this whole episode is kind of capped. There is more of a focus on the divine, allowing that to flow through, understanding our connection to each other, and that identity shift that happens ultimately is more of a loss of an identity shift. It's almost like we're still separate beings having a human experience, but it's almost like we become one with the whole, and we see us more as a unity consciousness from a higher perspective versus I am me, you are you. When we realize we're all going towards the same end result, right?
Yeah. And I think even just starting this conversation the way we did, exploring, some of the CIA gateway process and the hemisync and the pendulums and reality transurfing, like a lot of these concepts, I think, are helpful in the fact that they point to how much we don't know about reality,
right?
How mystical consciousness really can act, like reclaiming the power that we actually have within us. And instead of being a sheep in a mass pendulum of somebody else's thought creation, to like make space, find grace, discover what's lighting you up most, and become a creator of reality, and really be on that path of service to others. And so, man, just thanks for weaving through all those fascinating stories and technologies and your own personal path as well, man. Just been fun to always weave with you in convo.
Awesome, man. I love coming on your podcast. I love talking with you. Love you as a brother, and I appreciate you having me here, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's just we'll link everything where people can find you if they're curious.
Cool.
I feel like it's pretty easy to find you. Just search you up on Google or YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram.
Any other thoughts or anything else before we wrap up? Feel good?
I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff. I feel like one last thing I'll mention is around. I think spirituality can be very simple. I think that a lot of people, and myself included in the past, have gotten so tied up with learning spiritual concepts, watching YouTube videos, learning about all these really cool ideas. And I see it sometimes with people where they're looking for the next video, the next idea, the next mental candy that they want to like latch onto. And really, it's all extremely simple. Like the things that the Gateway Experience shows are connected to the things that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, that Neville Goddard talks about, that a lot of these people talk about, which is basically connecting the mind to the heart, focusing on what you want to create. It's all within your field. You can meditate to become aware of the patterns you have, but it can be very simple. And the biggest benefit for people, I think, is when they learn to go within themselves to find out what's true for them. Because the most spiritual person isn't necessarily the person with just all the crystals and all the cool, it's like sometimes I think spirituality can be given a certain energy that becomes almost like like a grandiose, like this thing where it's like, I want to feel better. Because I know when I went through my awakening in 2012, I felt like nobody understood me and I felt alone. So I was like, all these sleep people around me are asleep in the matrix. And that was my way of feeling better, and I recognize now that with spirituality, some of the most spiritual people I've met are people that don't even talk about spirituality at all. They're just extremely present. They're just extremely present to the moment. They get into a flow state. They're not a whole bunch. It's not like they're talking about a whole bunch of spiritual concepts. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I guess the point is not to get lost in it and to focus more on internalizing what that is for you, but also bringing it down from like the starseed energies and stuff and bringing it into the body. Being here now. I think that's one of the most spiritual things people could do is focus on being in the body, being present to the moment, and feeling connected to maybe a vision that's greater than your own.
Well said, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And this could be a whole nother podcast that we do, or I probably will do a solo episode soon, just kind of going through sharing my own journey and process around this, because it's definitely been a big theme. Being in this space also with, other influential personal development, spiritual teachers and other podcasters, there is this commodification, especially in the West, where it's like spirituality is used and commodified, and in certain podcasts, the more esoteric and vague something is titled or used, the more apparently profound it's supposed to be, you know, and you know, in the clickbaity culture, and just trying as much as I can while exploring these things that I'm genuinely fascinated with, and I know people are, but inviting that simplicity into it, you know, because it can be dangerous, and it really is. That spiritual identity is a slippery slope when you start to in ways unbeknownst to you, actually create more separation between you and life. And I think that it's a natural process, honestly, that we all go through as as we realize our spiritual nature. The ego's nature is to then latch onto that too. And so it's all invited. It's all part of the process. It's all part of the journey, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. Then it's like, well, then there's an identity where it's not super woo-woo and out there, and it's more grounded in spirituality. So it's like, it's a never-ending like leapfrog of identities, you know?
Anything the ego can hold on itself to survive.
I'm not like those abstract, spiritual, weird things that they're talking about. I'm a more grounded. So we just keep going down the rabbit hole.
I know. Right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's just so important to be mindful with that, and surround yourself with people that keep you in check. You know, it's really important.
I do it when I look at old YouTube videos of things I used to make. I can just see, I can judge myself, and then, you know, but it becomes this whole thing. But I've also just learned to accept for myself that was just a path, that was what I thought was real in the moment and what I was into in the moment. And then it's kind of like I'm able to look back to see all the different things I was into at certain moments in certain years as I've been on YouTube. That's the interesting thing about what we do, is there's like a track record of everything we've thought and felt. You know what I mean?
It's all out there.
Yeah. It's funny.
No, it's interesting to be able to track that. But I think the thing that keeps it real is when you authentically share your process along the way, and when there's videos of you ways that don't resonate anymore, and you can say, that's part of being human is that we grow and we develop, and that old beliefs no longer serve us in the path of, you know, finding deeper truth. So thank you for your authenticity and vulnerability,
of course,
and inviting that. And what a fun episode, dude.
I had so much fun. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to this episode of the Know Thyself podcast. Let us know in what ways what was said today uniquely inspired, impacted you, and where you're at in your own season and cycle of life and shifts of identity. You know, it's really important to feel. And the more that I meet you guys in person, the more that I'm just in awe, honestly, with just how many beautiful different stories and paths are unfolding, and how much we can all relate to this own process of becoming and being. So thanks for coming to this journey. Until next time, be well.